Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here, joined for the first time in a while again, Sarah, back from out of retirement to talk about The Mandalorian, Star Wars on TV, the second season of the hit show, so let's talk about it. So, The Mandalorian, this is, again, the first season on The Collision, we did like episode by episode breakdowns and went real in detail. We didn't do that this season. We sort of took the whole season in together. So again, we're not going to, in this review, go deep down to each detail, but just sort of our general thoughts. We just watched the finale, episode 8. So we both really enjoyed the first season a lot. Again, I'm a diehard, grew up watching Star Wars. They were the first non-cartoon movies I ever saw in my life. Sarah's more of a recent convert. When we started dating, getting married, made her watch them. So again, we kind of come at this from two different perspectives. I know all the deep backstory and lore. I've seen all the shows. She's seen all the movies, knows it, but not quite as deep. But we both enjoyed the first season. So how do you think the second season kind of stacks up to the first one?
I really enjoyed it. I want to go back and just watch it all. It's almost like a movie because I feel like when you catch so much more stuff. I definitely found this season to be a lot more consistent as far as all the episodes and the feel of everything than the first season. But we kind of talked about it, but there was too much of a formula going on. Every episode kind of followed a certain.
Yeah, and maybe we're on different ends of whether that's a problem or not. We definitely agree that it falls into this kind of formula. I guess the consistency thing, because again, I agree. I think it comes in two forms. I think this quality is more consistent. In the first season, as a whole, I love the show, but there was a little more of that was a sort of a filler episode, or then you get a really good episode, then you get one that it wasn't crazy about that, and where this season, pretty much every episode just delivers at the peak season 1 episodes, maybe with the exception of, I think it was episode 2 with the spiders and the frog lady wasn't my favorite. But I think it's kind of consistency. The show really did get into that rhythm where every week it just kind of keeps the momentum going. But again, yeah, there is definitely a template. It's hey, my ship's broken. I got to get a part. I got to get some information. This person can help me, but they're not going to give me what I need unless I go help them solve this problem over here. And then they go on the side mission, and most, maybe 5 of the 8 episodes are that storyline. Again, we should say too, if it's not clear, we're going to be talking spoilers. So if you haven't seen any of the show, maybe go back and watch through the show, the season before you watch this review. But again, you have the Ahsoka kind of side mission character. You got the Mandalorians, sort of their own side thing. He goes back and helps his old friends like Cara Dune and them from the first season. So it does kind of fall into a kind of this template of what's the mission of the week. But I don't know what you think as far as, although it did kind of have all these side missions, I felt like in another sense the season was more focused, because even the side missions are all kind of feeding into this main plot of kind of what he's doing with Grogu, the now named Baby Yoda. But it seemed like there was a lot more of this is the overall story we're moving towards it, where the first season was kind of a little more this doesn't really tie in, it's just fun. Then here's a mission. Do you get that? Is it?
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how I would enjoy them continuing with find where Baby Yoda needs to go. I felt like before the season started, it would be hard to keep going with that without getting kind of boring and the same thing. But I thought that they did a good job of progressing the story along, that it didn't seem like it was super long. And
yeah, and then obviously they finished by the end of the season. They're not going to drag that on. I feel like in some ways the end of this season felt like it was almost like a season or a series finale, or something that you would expect to happen. They've really dived in with sort of into the world and the lore of Star Wars a lot quicker than I think some people like myself were expecting. But a couple of things I feel like we should touch on. One, we'll get into kind of as far as it is very integrated into the lore now, probably more than some people expected. But before we get to that, let's just talk about the Mandalorian as a character, because it's interesting. This show was kind of pitched as you have this sort of this roguish kind of morally gray. He's on his own. He's just a bounty hunter. He has no heart, and he's just doing things for money. And this isn't the typical starry-eyed hero's journey. And like I feel like that lasted for about 3 episodes of this show. And he's
become a big softie.
Yeah, he's pretty much a typical Star Wars hero now.
Mm-hmm.
He's in some ways I think like the first episode of this season where he leaves that kind of Cyclops alien out to be eaten by he's like, I said I wouldn't kill you, but I'm not going to save you. So they throw in a few things like that. But what do you think about this arc as a character? Is he?
I feel like they kept true to him enough. Like I feel like he hadn't really discovered how soft he had really gotten, and or how compassionate he had gotten until the episode with
Ahsoka.
When he met with Ahsoka, and she kind of was like, no, you actually are super bonded with him, and you guys have a bond. I don't even think he really realized how connected they were. So it was kind of nice to see him it just kind of evolved really nicely.
Yeah, and I think that connection is really the heart of the show. Obviously, if you guys saw the last episode, I'm curious what happens now with, I can't imagine that we don't have Grogu in the show. So I don't know how they're gonna do that, but I don't know if it's his compassion is just he has this bond with this specific child, or if he's changing. And he cares about the child, or he's just sort of a nice guy that wants to help other people. And because even in the finale and some of the other missions with the Mandalorians and stuff, he's basically kind of like, I'll help you. You do your thing. I'm just here for the kid. I'm not here to help take back your planet or defeat the Empire. I just want my baby Yoda back. So I don't know. I think in some ways you kind of have to have that good character in Star Wars. I think even if you watch our first reviews of last season, we predicted he's going to be a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be a bad guy. He's real morally gray. But I was just sort of surprised at how quick he kind of transformed.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about him as far as we see him without the mask a few more times? How has he grown as a character? Is he growing? Are we learning more about him?
I think he's just starting to realize how his resolve to be the Mandalorian who never removes his mask and is so strict and all that just doesn't actually work well in real world, and he's just learning. He's more dynamic than that.
Yeah, because even that conversation, the second to last episode where he's with Mayfield, I think, the comedian Bill Burr, his character, and they're driving in that vehicle and they're kind of having this conversation. He's trying to take him off the mask, and he's kind of questioning or pushing the Mandalorian, saying, "Hey, we're all kind of the same. Everyone has these standards, and when they get pushed far enough, they kind of snap." And I think you do see growth that he's reevaluating.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of, again, if you're into the lore and stuff, the Death Watch, and he was raised in the Mandalorian cult. The more kind of traditional warlike and kind of the extremist group of the Mandalorians. So it's they obviously don't go super deep. It's still this is kind of a fun show, but there's sort of that religious dynamic of kind of wrestling with what you've just always thought to be true, and then kind of getting pushed. And I think you kind of see him go both ways, where he still pushes back on some of that. He's like, no, there is lines and codes are important, but in other ways, the helmet, he's realizing that there is room to adjust and grow.
It kind of seems like he's not, I don't know how new he is to the whole being out and doing the bounty hunting and stuff, but it almost seems like he hadn't ever really experienced anything other than go get the bounty and get it back. And he just only did the one thing, and then he started to realize there's more to the world and other things. His eyes are starting to be opened kind of thing.
Yeah, and maybe that's speaking of more to the world and the galaxy. The first season had some kind of Easter eggs or characters that were kind of familiar, and it sort of tied into the bigger scope and the Skywalker saga and stuff. This season dives straight into the deep end of it's real connect. You have Luke Skywalker. Again, I got that.
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. When that X-wing flies into view, we were both freaking out, and you get more and more reveals. You see the green lightsaber, you see the glove on his hand. I thought the CGI was, you can tell it's CGI, but it's still, to see a young Luke in his prime it's crazy that they did that. But again, you have Ahsoka, you have the Mandalorians. It's tied into like the books and the shows and the original movies and the prequels. And is that a good thing? Like it's.
Yeah, I think as a person who doesn't know as much about the like other, because it's not, they're kind of like the Rebels and I don't know all those shows, but like, see, I don't know all the extra
like Clone
shows,
Wars
but he's watched all of them, so like he knows. But I feel like a little bit gets lost if you don't know who the characters are, backstory, like because you know all about all of them. I kind of had to ask him questions every once in a while, but like, what's she like? Why is she so like kind of strict and serious? And like, I think it helps if you know the story, their backstories, or how they've been in other series, but I don't feel like you need to know it. It just kind of helps.
Yeah, and that's sort of that line you walk with it, like like Ahsoka. If you haven't seen her, like you've seen some of the cartoons to know who she was, but is there enough where you can just know she's a Jedi? That's all I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you're like a nerd like me, and you know when she's talking about connections and why it's dangerous, you know her master was Darth Vader, and she saw firsthand how that would affect. There's more layers to it, but I don't know if you get.
You don't need it.
I don't know if you necessarily get lost, but it's interesting because I feel like if before the show, like before season 1 aired, if you told me, well, actually it's going to be real connected into the lore, and it's because they were pitching it like this is separate from like the Skywalker saga, it's his own part of the galaxy, and like within 16 episodes we have an actual the Skywalker in the show. It's obviously I don't know how big of a plot line that would be, but in some ways it's sort of the opposite show. Like it is super connected. It's not its own thing. I feel like if you had told me before I saw any of this season, I would have been like disappointed. Like, I thought we were doing something fresh. I thought we weren't tying in. But I feel like having seen it and how they did it, it's just too much fun not to like seeing like Boba Fett, return and just taking on people in his new armor. Like any kind of, for me at least, like cynicism of why aren't we doing new characters? It's like, you know what, this is this like Star Wars like candy. Like this is this pure joy and kind of childish fun. This is stuff that like me and my brother would have played with our toys and like geeked out about back in the day. But what else kind of stands out about this?
I just kind of wonder if I feel like it was a little more successful the second season, and I wonder if it's part of the reason that like they introduced a lot of characters that are already established in the Star Wars. What do you call it? What do you call the whole thing?
Just like the mythology.
Because they're already established characters, whereas the first season was a lot of new characters, and I felt like it was more successful because there was like characters that we already know and love that were brought into this season.
Yeah, and you could say it's it's just fan service, and like it probably is. It probably is just the. Like I'm sure as they were sitting there, okay, we have the opportunity to bring back like a young Luke Skywalker. We can bring back Boba Fett, and have him join with the Mandalorian, and like it is pure sort of like. But the thing I think why it works is it makes sense in the story at least. Like it makes sense that Luke would be the one. There's not a whole lot of Jedis out there.
Yeah, I turned to him and I was like,
yeah, who's
left to be even come
back?
Like
in the timeline, like Luke's out there trying to find Force people to start his. The question is, if Grogu stays there, then in the timeline, Kylo Ren eventually kills all the students. Does Kylo Ren kill Grogu? I guess we'll find out. But again, it makes sense that he would be the one, or that you bring in like Bo-Katan, some of these Mandalorian characters. It's a show about a Mandalorian. So it makes sense that they would kind of get into that. So I don't think it's not really like Easter egg stuff where it's just like, this could be any character, but he's the guy you saw in the back of the cantina and, in Tatooine, and he just sort of says hi and then he walks off. Kind of like they did in Rogue One with one of the characters. Because it makes sense to the story. It is organic. It's not forced, but it definitely is kind of leaning into it. But maybe any kind of final, obviously we're excited for the next season, but what are you?
I also enjoyed after the Ahsoka episode, we were like
Ahsoka.
I always say I don't even know. Ahsoka episode. He was like, they're totally making a series after this about it. I like that there's a few Star Wars stuff that's coming out of this whole.
Yeah, not even a few. They're
spoiler.
You get a show. And I guess I am a little concerned, like as a Star Wars geek. Like give it to me. I'm hungry for it. I want to get it. What I hope it doesn't become though is like where the Mandalorian gets bogged down trying to set up all these other shows, and like I know like we used to back in the day watch like the CW superhero shows like the Flash and the Green Arrow
and they just combine
and
them all.
you know and like, it was cool at first. They started overlapping, but like, eventually it got to the point where like whole arcs would just happen so that they could spin off to some other show, and it. Like, I hope the Mandalorian isn't just doing that. Like, I hope, like, Ahsoka's still involved and the Mandalorians and, even, like, Boba Fett is having his own show now or whatever it's going to be, miniseries, movie. So I hope it doesn't just get bogged down to where it has to sort of be the Iron Man of this connected universe and just connect all the other stuff. But again, this is definitely, like, a golden age. I guess there's never been an age of Star Wars on TV, so it has to be the golden age. But just the amount of stories and stuff coming out. When you think like growing up watching Star Wars, you'd have to wait like 3 years between movies and then like, a decade between series or trilogies. And now it's like, you're going to get to the point where you wait like a couple weeks and then there's a new show.
I also say I started teaching this semester and I teach middle school, well, 4th grade through 8th grade. And just the amount of kids that talk about even The Mandalorian, all the way down to 4th grade, and they just love the show. And our boys who are 5 will watch it with us, and they absolutely love it. And then I talk to the teachers at lunch about it, and it's like I just love how limitless the age is for these shows.
Yeah, it captures that, Matt. And again, I've said in like my some of my Star Wars movie reviews, like to me, Star Wars is like it's a feeling, it's like an emotion. Like it's hard to describe exactly what it is I like about Star Wars or what makes it, or what I don't like about some Star Wars. Like, but it sort of captures that like magic and wonder that like the original had, like as you're a kid and like watching it with kids and kind of seeing, their eyes are lighting up and they're super into it, but like we're super into it. It's like it really does capture what like made A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie, so successful, where it's like a generational thing that doesn't kind of it's not too dark and violent, but it's not super kiddie like maybe the prequels were. It kind of hits that sweet spot. So again, we're obviously excited. We'd love to hear from you guys. What you, were you as big of a fan of season 2 as we were? Are you disappointed by the direction that it's, now it's getting all tied into Jedis and Skywalkers, and you kind of wanted that gritty bounty hunter show, which maybe you'll get with the Boba Fett, so who knows? But we'd love to hear from you guys. Again, thanks for joining us. Let us know your thoughts. If you haven't done so already, we'd love for you guys to subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, continue to collide with your world for Christ.